You got Mac and Mac here. Jody McDonald, John McMullen, hanging with Young Birds 365. Appreciate John Stolnis whenever he hops aboard and joins the show. First hour, I asked you about the running back position. Just asked John about it, how he thinks the carries are going to work themselves out in replacement of Miles Sanders. Interesting argument. Don't count carries, count touches. We'll see if the pass catching aspect of DeAndre Swift's game is taken advantage of. I know you said this, and I agreed with you on the show. It's just not going to be a big thing in the Eagles' offense while Jalen Hurts is their quarterback. That's not what he does. That's not how their offense runs. They're not going to have designated passes out of the backfield or running backs in slots. It is what it is. I'm not going to say they're never going to use it, but it's not going to be a big part of the Eagle offense when Jalen is the QB. Instead of RBs, I want to talk about DBs here. Eagles had a bunch of guys, both in the draft and their undrafted free agent signings during this offseason, more than linebackers, even though they had a bigger need at linebacker than they did for DBs, but they brought in a bunch of DBs because they, again, put value on that position. Here's the question I have for you, John. And again, maybe I'm too old school and I don't understand this. The ability for a player to change position at cornerback / defensive back in the National Football League in 2023. The Eagles are not alone in that they like guys who can play both safety and slot corner. It used to be in the National Football League, if you're a corner, you're a corner. And if you're a safety, you're a safety. And other than Ronnie Lott, the two don't really meet. They don't overlap. The corners were corners and safeties were safeties. But now a safety should be able to be a slot corner, and a slot corner should be able to go back and play safety. And you don't ask too many slot corners to go outside. God forbid you ever ask them to go outside and cover a wide receiver. When and how did that change? First of all, if you agree with me, please say so. If you don't, please tell me I'm just flat out wrong. But if I'm reading this right, when did that happen and why did it happen in the National Football League?
It has. I mean, when did it happen? It's kind of hard to point. I mean, the game as a whole has gotten much more specialized, more matchup driven. And as the offenses became more matchup driven, bringing up Jim Sports too much today, Jim would always tell me, defense is reactionary. You got to react to what the offense is doing. So that's kind of, it's kind of served up to you what you have to do to match up with what they're doing. Avonte Maddox is a perfect example here in Philadelphia. For those who forget, he played outside cornerback the 1 year, and it was not good. He did not play well. I remember Howie Roseman before the season saying he had some close to your heart, some Aaron Glenn traits, who was a short corner, who was a really good player for a long time. Different game when he got the Mike Evans of the world out there, outside the numbers. And it's really difficult to deal with those guys when you're 5'9". And they move him inside, and he's a really good player. I mean, he's one of the best 5 nickel slot corners in football, and he's one of the worst 5 outside cornerbacks, at least if you go by PFF as far as ratings go. And that's sort of the swing you have. There's a couple guys, but there aren't many, and they seem to be getting less and less. I know Murphy from Arizona last year sort of played outside and inside. He's got that ability, but I can't think of many. Now there's a couple guys that travel, and again, it's all dependent on scheme, right? This scheme is looking for a specific. You mentioned those mirrored players. You don't need that in certain other schemes. And they'll go to more traditional route of safety versus corner. So in the Fangio scheme, it's really important to have those mirrored players. So part of it is dependent, and if they go back to a Jim Schwartz era of defense, it'll change a little bit where they had, Jim was willing to use Malcolm Jenkins in a, he played 7 different positions. Um, you ain't going to see that in this defense. I'll tell you that. So it's dependent on scheme as well. But the league as a whole, yeah, it's gotten more specialized, and that's everything. Um, except offensive line and quarterback.
Now, we have talked plenty about the Eagles linebackers and or the lack thereof, depth, and even if their starters are good enough to start, we assume the Eagles are going to be very good at cornerback next year with Bradbury coming back. Hopefully he has as good a year as he did this past year. Slay coming back. Hopefully he can be a little more consistent over the year. Great in the first half, not as good in the second half. Injury included in the second half, but again, you can't control injuries. And Maddox being as good as he is at the slot. Do you like their depth at cornerback? They signed Greedy Williams. They've got Zach McPherson.
I like it a lot more than I did with Ringo, and they brought in talent. Like they didn't have guys who had the traits to do it last year. Like if something happened, and luckily it didn't. Slay and Bradbury played every game. Again, the health standpoint of it, I would have not been comfortable with Zach McPherson coming in, and you got to see a little bit of Zach. Again, I think Zach is better suited to play inside. I think he could be a good slot corner. I don't think he could be a good outside corner. Williams, disappointment in Cleveland, but he's got the traits to do it. Ringo's got the traits off the charts to do it. Does that mean they're going to play well right away? Probably not, but I feel more comfortable that at least they have the guys who have the physical ability to play the position. And a lot comes into it. Communication is huge in this defense. Too huge. It's the reason I hate the scheme. But when I get criticized, Jody, you're one of the few people that know because you're forced to listen to me every day. You probably don't want to listen to me, but you're forced to listen to me every day. How many times have I said I hate this scheme? I mean, nobody hears it. Nobody. And the reason I hate this scheme is because it puts too much on the defensive backfield from a communication standpoint, especially with younger players. You saw Darius Slay, James Bradbury, who are two of the savviest corners in the NFL. Marcus Epps, high football IQ, younger player, but high football IQ. CJ might be loud, but high football IQ. The Eagles built it that way, I think, for a reason. I think Howie built it that way for a reason. And I constantly say, why did the Eagles play the Fangio defense better than anybody else who plays the Fangio defense last year? And to me, the biggest part of it, the pass rush is huge. I'm not going to downplay it. But the biggest part of it is they communicated so well. And I always point out blown coverages everywhere on these Fangio defenses, all over the place, just ugly blown coverages because they're not communicating. The Eagles do it, crap the bed in the final 30 minutes. And that's with all these football savvy, high IQ guys, and they still crap the bed at the end of the day because there's too much on the plate of these players in this defense. Now you turn that from Slay and Bradbury to Ringo and Williams. Ooh, you're going to see some blown coverages.
Yeah, probably. Certainly the two walk-in touchdowns against Kansas City in the second half are the most blatant examples thereof. I think back to 3rd and 30 against the Cowboys too, getting your nickel guy to be back deep in coverage didn't make any sense, but that was the play and they didn't communicate it. And the Cowboys were able to convert. So you're right. It's both the ability to communicate between the guys And the reason that I don't dislike it as much as you do, I don't know if anybody dislikes it as much as you do, but I would question it from time to time during the year is because what the master says. When he was different, when he was the cutting edge guy, when he was the defense that people didn't recognize because nobody in the National Football League played it that way, then it was great. Then teams didn't have an answer for it. But now it seems like about at least a third, if not sneaking up on a half of the teams in the National Football League play the Fangio defense. Well, now everybody's prepping for it every other week. So it isn't as big a surprise. It still keeps the element of trying to keep your defense under wraps until the very last second so the quarterback doesn't know exactly what's coming their way. But if you're going to do it that way, you're right. Communication is an absolute must. Everybody's got to be on the exact same page. Responsibilities change. When it works, it's great, to the tune of 70 sacks. When it doesn't, there are big plays and there are ugly plays that happen against it. And we got a new guy calling it this year for the disdain that the majority of this town has for Jonathan Gannon. Gannon had a damn good defensive year. This defense put up real numbers.
That Bick is the godfather of the modern NFL defense, as you mentioned. He topped out at number 3 in his top defense. Never had the number 2 defense in the NFL.
I don't think he ever had the top 5 talented defense. That's why Fangio gets the kind of.
Well, he had a pretty talented group in Chicago with Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks and Eddie Jackson. He had a pretty talented group in Chicago, and they were really good. They were really good defensively. That's where he kind of took off. But again, Khalil Mack was Defensive Player of the Year. Phenomenal pass rusher. Akeem Hicks is. I don't know if anybody saw Akeem Hicks in his prime. He was the closest thing to unblockable this side of Aaron Donald. Eddie Jackson was the perfect safety for that defense, for this defense. They had a really, really good defense. And that's where he took off. And San Francisco as well, but which has had seemingly a good defense forever. And they continue to have a good defense. That defense was really good last year, and people are focusing on 30 minutes, and I get why, but that's what I was talking about with John Stolness. Expectations are unrealistic, Jody. Oof. Unrealistic.
And they will not be dropped. I know the Philadelphia fan base too well. They're not going to go, we got to cut this guy a little slack. He's new. He's learned. No. The only thing that will be acceptable is a trip back to the Super Bowl led by the defense. And, oh, by the way, the Super Bowl is 60 minutes. In case anybody forgot, it's not 30, it's 60. And we expect the defense to play to that level. Yeah, Sean Desai is walking into very high expectations on this defense. And as John Stolness pointed out, exactly right. During this offseason, they've certainly they might put more money into the offense, a.k.a. Jalen Hurts' contract extension, as far as acquisition and player changes and upgrades. They've done more to do so for the defense. Now, they had to because they had more losses on the defense, walking away via free agency and the like. But Sean Desai is going to be expected to upgrade the defense, make the defense better than it was last year, which was the number 1 defense. So good luck with that, Sean. All right, Jody Mac, Johnny Mac, we got the Mac and Mac guys here. We're going to take one step back to the draft. We haven't had our buddy Rick Saratella on since the draft came down. He and his draft Bible give us both the Eagle read and the entire National Football League on the draft. Coming back here on Birds 365. Stay with us.